Empire State Building and its accidents. Welcome everyone, let's talk about the misfortunes that happened during the construction of the Empire State Building, including the famous plane crash. Let's get started. In the late 1920s, when New York's economy was doing better than it had ever before, workers were racing around the clock to build the world's tallest building. The main buildings in this race were the Bank of Manhattan building at 40 Wall Street and the Chrysler building. The Chrysler building is a grand Art Deco building that was meant to be a monument to me by auto businessman Walter Chrysler. Both towers tried to be the biggest and better than any other by adding more floors to their designs. When former New York Governor Al Smith and General Motors executive John J. Raskob announced plans for the Empire State Building in August 1929, the competition between the two buildings reached a fever pitch. Walter P. Chrysler made one last change to his plans when he found out that the Empire State Building would be exactly 1,000 feet tall. He added a stainless steel spire to the very top of his skyscraper. The expansion brought the Chrysler Building to a new height record of 1,048 feet, but unfortunately for Chrysler, Raskob and Smith did not stop there. Instead, they went back to the drawing board and came up with a design for the Empire State Building that was much taller. When it was finished in 1931, the building stood at an impressive 1,250 feet above Midtown Manhattan streets. After the first tower at the World Trade Center was finished in 1970, it would stay the tallest building in the world for almost another 40 years. In order to construct such a tall structure, many casualties occurred that we'll talk about in this video. Well, the official records show that hundreds of people died while the Empire State Building was being built. However, only 5 workers died because they slipped and fell or were hit by big things. How did the workers at the Empire State Building die? The first tragedy happened when a worker who had been fired jumped down an open elevator shaft while the building was still being built. Evelyn McHale, who was 23 years old at the time, jumped to her death from the 86th floor observation deck on May 1st, 1947. How many people died building the Empire State Building? Official records show that hundreds of people died while building the Empire State Building. However, only 5 workers died because they slipped and fell or were hit by big things. Now, let's talk about the plane crash. On July 28, 1945, 14 people died when a military plane from the United States of America crashed into the Empire State Building. The strange thing that went wrong was caused by the thick fog. The B-25 Mitchell bomber had 2 pilots and 1 passenger on board when the accident happened. They were going from New Bedford Airport in Massachusetts to LaGuardia Airport in New York City. On that particular Saturday morning, the fog was very thick as it moved into the city. Officials in charge of air traffic told the pilot of the airliner to go to Newark International Airport instead. The new route took the plane over Manhattan. The crew knew ahead of time that they wouldn't be able to see the Empire State Building, which at the time was the tallest building in the city. The bomber was flying slowly and low when it got close to the Chrysler Building in the middle of Manhattan. This was done to help it see better. It turned away from the building to avoid hitting it, but the move caused it to crash into the north side of the Empire State Building near the 79th floor. The jet's fuel exploded when it hit the building, setting fires all the way down to the 75th floor and shooting flames out of the hole the plane made in the building's side. The plane crashed into the building, making a hole. One of the jet's engines crashed through the building and landed on the other side of the street in a penthouse apartment. Other parts of the plane got stuck inside and on top of nearby buildings. At least one woman was in the elevator car when the other engine caused the cable that held it together to break. The emergency auto stop stopped the woman from being pulled down the shaft to her death, but the engine still fell down the shaft and landed on top of her. Rescue workers were quick on their feet to be able to get the woman out of the elevator, which saved her life. Because it was a Saturday, there were a lot fewer people working in the building than there would have been on a weekday. 11 people were trapped inside the building when it caught fire. Some of them died from burns caused by the flaming fuel, and others died being thrown from the building. All 11 of the people who died in the crash were taken in by the War Relief Services Department of the New Catholic Welfare Conference, where the plane had crashed. The plane had crashed into the office of the department. Also killed were the 3 people who were on the plane. There's now an 18 by 20 foot hole in the side of the Empire State Building. The collision did not weaken the building's structure, but it did cost almost $1 million in damage, which is about $10.5 million in today's money. Another accident happened when a woman fell from 75 stories from an elevator in the building, but still survived. In 1945, a bomber crashed into the Empire State Building, which caused damage. Part of the B-25's engines were stuck in an elevator shaft. Betty Lou Oliver, who was only 19 years old at the time, was running an elevator when the wires for the two cars were cut. Oliver was lucky that more than 1,000 feet of broken elevator cable had gathered at the bottom of the shaft to soften the fall of the elevator into the sub-basement. The elevator had already crashed into the sub-basement when it fell from the 75th floor. It's possible that the car's quick fall caused a pocket of compressed air, which in turn slowed the object's fall. Even though Oliver had serious injuries like a broken neck and back, she was able to live. The next one is not an accident, but a stupidity. Two reckless people used parachutes to jump out of the skyscraper from the observation deck. Alistair Boyd and Michael McCarthy, two British adventurers, bought tickets to the Empire State Building in April 1986, put parachutes under their coats, and jumped off the 86th floor observation deck. Both were able to land safely on 33rd Street, more than 1,000 feet below, but McCarthy was taken into custody right away and Boyd flagged down a taxi and left the scene. But he turned himself in quickly, and he and the other guy were both charged with reckless endangerment and illegal parachuting. After 12 years, this stunt was done again by a Norwegian parachutist, Thor Alex, the human fly Kopfjell, who jumped off the 34th Street side of the building. This time, people started calling him the human fly. A few days earlier, Kopfjell got away and used a parachute to jump off the Chrysler Building, but he was caught after jumping off the World Trade Center. The last one was an accident, but the only casualty was our King Kong. In honor of the movie's 50th anniversary, an inflatable King Kong was put on the Empire State Building. Results were not at all the same. There were more than 90 movies that include the Empire State Building. The most famous is King Kong, which came out in 1933 and has the famous scene in which the title character, a huge ape, climbs the building while being chased by a flock of aeroplanes. The original scene was shot in a studio, but to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the movie in April 1983, the president of a balloon company tried to recreate it by attaching an inflatable King Kong to the Empire State's mooring pole. Unfortunately, the plan didn't work out. The joke was supposed to be worth $150,000, but it didn't work out that way. The 84-foot Kong balloon tore while it was being filled, so the plan to have old planes buzz it while it was in the air didn't work out. It wasn't inflated until a few days later, but it only stayed on the building for a few hours before another tear caused the whole project to be canceled. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for more.